I don't think there's a place that I've ever been to that has felt so otherworldly than Eastern Oregon. I don't think you can define it with a single word, but if I had to pick one, it would be fierce. Me and Zak went out in search of the most elusive Mustangs in the United States, and not only did we find them, we discovered so much more along the way. This is Freedom Wild, the Western Wilderness. Our journey to Steens Mountain led us through the middle of Eastern Oregon. We had began our trip to Crack in the Ground, an aptly named volcanic fissure created over 700,000 years ago.
We're here at Crack in the Ground. It's about 10 o'clock, and this is just phenomenal. I had no idea this was here, so this was something we just stumbled into along the way, but it's absolutely breathtaking.
This seemingly cave-like crevice of volcanic rock reaches depths of over 70 feet below normal ground and maintains much cooler temps than the surrounding ambient air. One of the most unique geological features in Oregon, that's for sure. After exploring the area for a bit, we headed to our main destination, Steens Mountain in southeast Oregon, which rises above the surrounding desert by over 4,000 feet. We knew that there was a good chance to spot the wild horses as we entered the South Steens Wilderness, and as I looked behind our truck on one of the turns in the road, we had seen a band of them at a watering hole. It was magnificent to witness this area and these horses, which were a culmination of pintos, bays, palominos, and so many more. We witnessed many individuals having a lot of fun with each other, and it was apparent these guys were living it up out here at the watering hole. After watching them for a bit, we headed up the road, and I was stunned by a large stallion that was obviously not liking the presence of me nor the truck. So we got some shots of him and headed up to the summit of Steens Mountain itself. This terrain is harrowing to those who aren't familiar with the high desert. Thorn thistle everywhere, endless sagebrush, and what appears to be nothing but dust and rust. But if you know where to look, there are glimpses of Eden. That is Steens Mountain, the largest fault block mountain in the United States at over 9,000 feet tall. We got to the road's summit, which holds the title of Oregon's highest drive-to road. After we got our packs on, we headed down to Wildhorse Lake, one of only a couple lakes that hold cold water and depth on the mountain. After an hour or so of hiking, we reached the lake and set up camp, but not before throwing out a few casts, where I was graced by the Lahontan cutthroat trout, a native to the region, though not necessarily to this lake. Look at that. First cutthroat of Wildhorse Lake. Wow, that's actually a healthy one. That is such a cool fish. The night was cool, calm, and perfectly quiet. The morning opened up with sunshine, stillness, and eager trout. I fished dry flies, foam ant patterns in particular, and landed about a dozen or so fish over the morning and afternoon. We had a blast catching fish and enjoying the scenery. After having enough fun for the morning, we packed up and started to head back up the mountain. You'll notice a lot of different flora in this region, so be sure to look out for Steens Mountain thistle, shooting star, and Steens Mountain paintbrush, a plentiful example of the biodiversity of the area. After getting back to the truck, we took a long drive around the bottom of Steens Mountain, stopping through the pit stop that is the so-called town of Fields, Oregon. From there, we drove northeast through the Alvord Desert to seek out Mickey Hot Springs, but not before having some fun on the sand of the once-filled Alvord Lake. After we were done having our fun at Alvord Lake, we got back on the road, and after a little bit of driving, we had arrived at Mickey Hot Springs. These springs are quite spectacular for Oregon, being an almost mini version of Yellowstone in the desert. Though they may be active, many fumaroles and springs are now dry, signaling scientists that the area is slowly becoming dormant. We're just glad we could see them before they're gone. A strange thing occurred on our way out of there. A freak thunderstorm dropped a lot of rain, which was refreshing to the dust and wind we'd experienced the days prior. But we still had our main destination to reach, the North Steens Wilderness, in hopes of finding the most elusive and rarest wild Mustang in the United States, the Kiger. The drive to get onto Steens Mountain, no matter what way you go, is pretty dang steep. The way we chose, let's just say it wasn't pleasant. Remote is more like it, but we knew that to find these Mustangs, we'd have to get way back into the wilderness.
So we're currently driving from the Alvord Desert over towards Diamond, and it's one of the rockiest roads I've ever been on, but the views are absolutely breathtaking. Just driving through these cow pastures and just makes you feel like the Wild West is really so alive.
About 10 miles of rock and mountain road later, we were able to spot a distant herd of pronghorn antelope. It did not take long before they were onto us. I guess that's just antelope for you. 3 hours in, 2 gates, and 1 wrong turn later, we found a perfect hill to make for a lookout. 30 minutes went by when out of nowhere, I seen a horse across from us in a canyon.
So, I just ran down, but we made it to this viewpoint up in the North Steens, and we were looking for Kiger Mustangs, and we hadn't seen anything. It's, late in the evening, and we just came across 3 about, I'd say, 500 yards or so that way. So, in the process of filming.
After a fairly rough 3 days in the backcountry of eastern Oregon, we finally witnessed the rare and wild Kiger Mustang. The Kiger Mustangs are believed to be the last surviving descendants of Spanish horses brought over in the 1500s to the United States. The term Mustang is actually derived from the Spanish word musteño, meaning unclaimed sheep, but would later come to mean wild horse. Mustang is the English slang for the original meaning. Until the late 70s, Spanish horses were believed to be extinct from the United States, but a DNA test from a Mustang roundup in Burns, Oregon, found a certain particular Mustang to have a close relation to the Iberian horses brought by the Spanish over 500 years ago. We had watched these horses for 20 minutes before they had passed the horizon for the evening. We spent the night on the lookout, trying to stay away from the camel spiders frequenting our campfire. The next morning, we sent off back home to Ashland, Oregon. Once I was settled back at home, I was able to interview someone who knew a lot more about these horses than I did.
All right. Well, my actual name is Sonya Spaziani, and I am known as Mustang Meg on Facebook and other social networks. And I live in Oregon, and I photograph the southeast, the South Steens, wild horse herds, plus maybe 7 other herds out in the southeast region. But we focus on the South Steens mostly, in fact, applying range names so that we can actually track these horses.
That's actually really interesting. No, you gave me a thought. How well do you know a lot of those horses in the South Steens?
Very well.
Okay, so I'm gonna share a picture of one. Let's see if it will actually pop up.
That is Sundown.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yeah. In fact, he's a Dante son, and he's out, like if you're driving up the mountain towards Wildhorse Lake, he resides mostly in that big giant area on the left-hand side before it starts going up the mountain. And it's called Tombstone Prairie.
And so tell me a bit more about the Kigers of the region.
So the Kigers are about 30 miles north, and they're outside of Diamond, and they are based on genetic testing. They have close markers to the Spanish horses when the conquistadors were here in this area. So they're closest to those genetic markers.
Going back to the antelope we spotted twice on the mountain, I learned just how important they are for the wild horses.
The neat thing about pronghorn is that for the Mustangs, they're their first alarm system. And the antelope can be a half a mile or let's say a quarter mile from a band of Mustangs or a herd of Mustangs. And if the pronghorns start running, the horses all pick up their heads from grazing, and they look where they came from, and they look for that danger sign, and that usually blows our cover when we're sneaking on extra wild horses that are not very familiar with people.
Right.
So it's like if we see a little herd of pronghorn.
Sonya and I spoke about a lot in this interview, from horses to films and wildlife in general. It was truly great to speak with someone so passionate about horses and their environment. The remote desert always feels so enormous when compared to myself. There isn't a place like the Steens in the world, in size or splendor, that's anything like it. It will hopefully forever be fierce and untamed. Freedom truly runs wild on Steens Mountain, Eastern Oregon.